Hello everyone and welcome to Photoshop for Presentations. This is your instructor Dan Hood, and I just wanted to do a quick little video tutorial about layers and blend modes. We've had a couple of questions about layers and blend modes and how they interact with each other and how stacking order affects layers and blend modes. So I'm just going to go over a real quick video that kind of shows how they interact with each other. Okay, as you can see here, I have set up three different layers. I have, yeah, let me turn these off. First of all, I have a caboose car from a train. I have a scene down here of the desert scene that you may be familiar with. And then I also have a mountain lake scene here. And these are all on separate layers. And the thing I wanted to describe or to say about layers is that as you've read, that if you can imagine layers being layers of acetate on an overhead or something like that, where if you would lay one layer or one acetate over the other, that you would be able to, by manipulation, by coloring in certain areas or taking away certain areas, you could see through them, or you could stack them on top of each other to make different images out of a collection of individual acetates. Well, the same thing goes for Photoshop. Now, your bottom layer here is, if you can imagine, is the bottom layer of your acetates. So everything that works up is going to be the image that you will see in its entirety. So like, say for instance, I have Mountain Lake here. That you will see, and then as you can see, then you have the desert image there. That's the second layer. And if I were to turn that off, then you can see the bottom layer, which is the caboose train car. So just remember that the top layer is the layer that you will see in its entirety, and other layers, either you will not be able to see them because the top layer is completely covering them, or you'll only be able to see sections of them, like in this case, because the image is at least covering a portion of your lower layers. Now, going on, and actually I wanted to point out one other thing, and another way to show this to you is that by changing the opacity here of different layers, you can get, it's what you would consider like a very simple blend. By taking, say, the opacity of this mountain lake image and lowering the opacity, as you can see, the opacity falls and blends into the lower layers. Now if I were to take that all the way back up to 100%, then the opacity is at 100% and you cannot see through it anymore. And so the same thing goes with, say, like if I took the desert scene layer, which is in the middle, if I turned its opacity down, you notice that it blends into the layer below it, which is the caboose train car. And let's go back to the mountain lake, and if I take down the opacity of that, you see that blends in too. So, okay, so that shows you a quick example of how opacity and layers and how they work from top to bottom. Now let's quickly go into blend modes, and as you know, the blend modes are located right here in your layers palette under this little drop down menu, and these are different blend modes. What these are, it's just a series of different filters that Photoshop has preset that do a number of different effects on layers. I could go into detail about what each one does, but the video would be very long because, as you can see, there's a lot of different blend modes. I'm also going to include a link to adobe.com that goes into great detail about what each blend modes does, and I would suggest that you go and read that because it really is a good learning tool about what each blend mode does. So I'm just going to go over a couple to show you what they do. I'd say the most widely used ones are, say, like multiply. And I'm going to apply this, well, actually I'm going to apply this to Mountain Lake, which is my top layer, just to show you how it works. Okay, so if I apply multiply, it takes down the opacity, as you can see, but it also does certain things with the colors and how they interact with each other on different layers. Now let's say I'm going to apply the multiply blend mode to the second layer, which is the desert. And therefore you see again how it interacts with different layers. I think a good example here is you can see this is an area of of very dark shadow in the desert, and how it plays with the caboose and actually kind of like it gives a knockout effect here. So that's just one form of blend modes. And then there's also screen, which does a little thing. Actually, it brightens stuff up, and I applied that to the Mountain Lake. An overlay, which actually really does more of like a blending, very kind of similar to what opacity does, but at a greater degree of sophistication. Anyway, so the one thing that I would suggest also is just to go through and play with these different blend modes. It gives you a better idea of what they're all capable of and how they can be used in between different layers. Now the one last thing that I will talk about, and this was another question that was asked a lot, was how do these blend modes interact with other layers? Okay, so quickly I will show you how they do indeed work with other layers. Okay, so say for instance, if I were to put a blend mode on the very lowest layer, Frisco Cab, the caboose image here, and let's say that I'm going to put an overlay on it. Well, as you can tell, the difference between overlay and normal mode really is no different, and the reason that is because there is not a layer below it to have some kind of effect on. So really, even if I have it on overlay mode here, there isn't anything to affect underneath. So it really, to the human eye, has no effect. But let's say that I take that and I put this desert image and I put the multiply on that. Well, you can see that it does have an effect because the desert layer with multiply blend mode is affecting the lower layer of Frisco Cab and is actually doing a blend between the two. But now this is what I will show next, is that I have the Mountain Lake layer turned off by clicking the eyeball icon next to it. That will turn it off. If I turn it on and it doesn't have any blend mode on it, you can see that it just basically it will cover up anything that is in front of it. So yes, the question, the answer to that question is that blend modes will only affect other layers if they are below the layer that you're putting the blend mode on. So like I said, the desert, which is the second layer, has a blend mode on it. It affects the Frisco Cab, the one below it, but does not affect the one above it, which is the Mountain Lake, as you can plainly see here. So the short answer to that is, as I just said, that blend modes only affect layers below it. So I hope this little video helped, and if you have any more questions, please ask in the discussion section and we will tackle that next question. All right. Thanks for watching, and happy photoshopping. Bye.